it's always fun for me to find out about habits leaders. And then when she chose that song, I was like, that's her mindset. That's her mindset. It's her mindset. So we got that. I want to thank her as well being a part of today. WyQuasia is a part of the second class of Black fashionpreneurs. I like to call it Black fashionpreneurs, who came to when it was virtual Black Fashion Premiere. So thank her. Because of her, as well as I mentioned earlier, she had to leave. That's why we first launched today. We will continue. So let's talk. The last time we went to Career Day, we couldn't talk about Redefining connection. We couldn't talk about it. It was I don't know exactly where it was, but I think it was on the cusp of being released. So we can talk about it today. We can talk about the buying at the sorority collection. And not only that, at that time it was just the sorority collection. Now we can talk about the fraternity collection as well. So let's jump right in. What inspired the idea for you to come up with the sorority collection and then the fraternity collection?
So I'm a proud member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. And so many of times when we're getting dressed for our galas, for our scholarship events, you need to be in your colors. And how much royal blue and white could I actually have, right? And every time you show up at these events, you want to be in something new because you're being photographed. So it was the middle of the pandemic. I remember furloughing my entire team on camera. And, we got a furlough team. And so that for me was the most pivotal, I think, time in my career because I had just entered a dynamic time of leadership in the role that I was in at the company. And now I have a team of 5 people that report to me and I have to furlough them during this hard time. And so all I could think about is when outside opens back up, we're gonna make some noise. And me being heavily involved in a sorority and giving scholarships and all of those things, it was important for me to know also at that time that we were also shut down. So having my job and having something that I'm passionate about outside of work, the two just made sense together. And so not having anything to do, I was like, I have to think of something for when outside opens back up. We're gonna change the game. And me being one of the few Black buyers, that's not a position that you will see filled by a Black woman often or a Black person in general often. It's had my mind spinning. And so sitting at home and I was like, this has never been done before. There is not a clothing line that does not speak to us. And when I say speak to us, I mean just in our colors. It doesn't have to have our emblem on it, our symbol, just our colors. And it's never been done at the level of national retailing, right? When you buy your para, you're buying it from a small brand, a small company. And I knew for me and my chapter specifically, we like to make noise. So we all like to show up and we go to an event all wearing the same thing. And how hard is that when you're doing it with a small team? So that's how the idea was birthed. I went directly to my boss at the time, Lisa and Julie, and I credit her so much because it wasn't until I went to her that it actually was able to come to life. So I went to a few mentors of mine who looked very much like me, and they were big names at the company and outside the company. And they all told me, Quasia said lightly, this is a fashion disruption. I don't think people are ready for this, and I want you to be careful. And that was the sentiment that I got from them, and getting that from specifically 2 of them, who, like I said, were big dogs. That was, that made me rethink and reconsider. But I'm a woman of faith, and so what God has for me is for me. And He wouldn't let me rest on it. He would not let me rest on it. It kept coming back to my mind and coming back to my mind. And so that's when I went to Lisa and I said, Lisa, I have this groundbreaking idea that's never been done before. And if it's done and we do it the right way, this is going to make so much noise. And not only is it going to make noise, it's going to make this company a lot of money. And she looked at me and she said, Quasia, I have no idea what you're talking about. Sorority, you're a grown, like we are grown people here. Isn't that college? Like she could not wrap her mind around it. And she said, but one thing I do know is I know you. I know your passion. And I know that anything that you put your mind to, it's going to be great. So she gave me the runway with my budget that I had as a buyer. She said, if you want to segment whatever that investment is, and at the time it was about $1 million investment, that if you want to segment your funds to be able to do that, I'm going to fully support you. And that's literally that. That's all I needed. And from there, the rest is history.
I want to insert in really quick. So WyQuasia was moving forward. We talked about her role as a buyer. If you did, so we're not going to dive too much into that role today. That video is available online on our YouTube page at BFWFoundation. If you can't find it, message me later. I'll send you the direct link to it. Because also there's 3-day 2021. Jackson has also an investment value 3-quarter. It's 2022. It's 2023. So definitely hear more about the role of buyer. I'll invite you to that. But going back to what you just said, that was courageous. So thank you. And that just goes with anybody who was here earlier when I said ever think that you're not worth. She made that $10 million off an hour function. And I just want to remind those, like I said, you weren't here earlier, the Met Gala made that unprecedented 31 more than $31 million more than ever made in the history celebrating our culture. So you are worthy of what you have to bring to the front matters and makes money. So talking about that, walk us through that process of concept to floor to that to the what was that entail?
A lot of thoughtful planning and I think in partnership. So again, being in the space, it's never been done before, me having this role. My peers surrounded, they don't know anything about a Black Greek letter organization. So having that, and I don't want to call it ignorance, but literally having to deal with educating colleagues of mine, both, peers, but then also senior leaders at the company, getting background, to break through. Like there are women who are educated that have money to spend to look good. That was the part that I had to convince the most. And it's a beautiful story. I mean, you Google it, it's a beautiful story. CEO, raved about it every chance he can get. But literally to get there, when I tell you the sleepless nights, the amount of convincing that I had to do, and it wasn't until, and I think you said it beautifully, it's about your partnerships and your collaboration. That's what was able to help me get that done. Casper specifically, the CEO of Casper, from the early stages of my career, I was an assistant buyer and I was showing up in her showroom. I was just there to take notes. So you're an assistant. You're literally there to assist the buyer and just showing up who I am, loud, proud about my organization, but also B, the work that I do outside of showing up to work every day. Oh, I have to wear all white this weekend. We're bringing in new members. The CEO's listening to that. Oh, do you want to wear something, Casper? Of course, I always need white. Yeah. So now I'm getting dressed by Casper, right, for some of these events. So now I land this role as buyer, 10 years later at the company, and I still have this relationship with the CEO of the company. And so I go to her and I say, you know how much I love Zeta, right? She says, absolutely. And she understood it because she took time to know me. And she said, I want to do a collection. And I want to do this for my organization as well as my sister organizations. I want to do it with Casper. And the reason why I want to do it with Casper is because you understand us, you understand me, and we need to disrupt fashion with someone that's truly going to get it. And she looked me in the face and she said, and when you're doing something of this nature, there's a lot of investment that goes into building these type of brands. So this was a huge risk. Again, it's a beautiful story, but this was a huge risk. If it did not work, I would have not had a job, like in full transparency. Because it was a huge investment and huge risk. But the partnership with the CEO and Casper and her entire team, putting that faith in me is what made it a thing. And we sat down and she said, "What's your vision?" We got the colors down to the right exact Pantones. We worked together and she would not give up until it was literally, this is it. This is the collection. This is what I want to put forward. But what made it a real reality again is I'm working for a multi-billion-dollar company and I have to convince people that this is something that's going to happen. And while I got the green light from my boss to do it, I still needed support from the company that I, full transparency, was not getting. So I used my resources. The hairstylist was my hairstylist. The makeup artist was the makeup artist that did my wedding and everything else after that. The videographer was my homeboy from the town that shoots local birthday parties and things. So I literally pulled all of my resources together, including one of my great friends who's a stylist. And I said, I need all of us. I don't have a budget. Casper is going to support this, but we have to do this together. And it was my resources in the initial launch of this. Those pictures that you saw on Broadway, those women, I knew every single woman in that picture from all of the different organizations represented, from my sister being one, all the way to one of the other women who her daughter goes to my daycare. And those were real members of the organization with zero resources, multi-million-dollar company. I pulled my own resources and pulled this together. And when it broke the internet, that's when it became such a beautiful story. And now everyone wants to listen. Now I have everyone's attention. Now all these eyes are on Macy's and this beautiful DEI moment that we created. And now this is a thing. But the road to get there, to answer your question, was very, at times, it was blurry. It took a lot of sacrifice on my part, and a lot of dedication, I think, to be able to get it done. But I don't regret the path that I had to take to get there, because it makes me even more beautiful story.
What kept you going?
The finish line. I knew in my heart that collection was going to change the game. I haven't been with Macy's for, I want to say, 3 years now. And that collection is still there. It is still a thing. It's transsolved into the fraternity collection. And it is still making the company a lot of money. But what it's also doing is shining light on these organizations, the work that we do every single day in our communities. And it's also making them the beneficiary of what is going to happen anyway in this industry. So I think that is what kept me going, is I knew that we would, at the end,
What was it like talking about the fraternity collection, working with a Black-owned brand? What was it like working with a Black-owned brand versus working with a brand like Casper? What can you share? And in that, what tips or things did you learn that you could share with African American actors?
Yeah, so I think for me, the reason, you live and you learn. So again, I stated on this, I had to do this entire project on my own, using my own resources. And I got both the good and the bad from it. So, everyone, this is amazing, this is so great. But then at the same time, I remember that the media, they tore me up in a lot of spaces, because it was, you did this beautiful thing for Black sororities, but then you went and the story got told to, a white publication. Bloomberg got the exclusive story for the launch of this. And that, again, is out of my control, right? I'm using all my resources to do this. Once the company gets wind that this is great, now everybody's involved and now decisions are being made and I'm not a part of those decisions. So the media gave me some pushback about that. And of course, it was my face, right? I was the face of this. And what I think strategically made me work with Taeyeon specifically is that when they were saying the comments about, or you chose Casper, and it's a white brand, all of these things, right? And you went to Bloomberg. I said to myself, in the next iteration of this, I'm going to do it right. I'm going to follow it all the way through. And so I pushed. and I pushed and I pushed because now you have the attention of everyone. You just made $10 million in the first year. So now everybody, you got to collaborate now. Now marketing wants to be involved. Now this group wants to be involved. All these teams now want to be involved. And so the fraternity collection was actually going to be private label Macy's. And I said, absolutely not. We will do this with a Black designer. We will absolutely do this with a Black designer. And that took a lot, again, of me pushing and me showing up and me demanding my seat at that table as to why I could do this with a Black designer. And Monty is an amazing person to collaborate with, but that also wasn't easy to get it done. But we made sure that we were going to do the next iteration of this collection, right? So we picked the Taeyon brand, and Essence got the exclusive story for the release of the fraternity collection.
So let's talk about, thank you. This is why it matters having a seat at the table. At a seat at the table. You stepping into executive leadership, you're director of merchandise buying at Macy's. What type of mind shifts did you have to make to talk about the career aspects of it now? To step into those roles, one, because you wanted to, because you qualified for it, and because you are an advocate for it. But what type of mind shifts did you have to make that people need to know about what they're doing?
So I think for me, I went through a few different phases. It was very much, trying to fit in. I think, again, when you get on the corporate side of retail, specifically in merchandising, you don't see a lot of people that will look like yourself. So you're trying to find a mentor in the same space, which is almost impossible. But then also B, you're trying to navigate your way in your career ladder with limited resources that some of your colleagues or peers might have. One for me being I didn't attend a large university. So where all of my colleagues coming in, they went to the Villanovas, they went to the large schools where Macy specifically recruited for them. I had to find a job posting online, decide that I wanted to come in at the most, even though I had a degree, I had to come in at the most entry level position, and then really campaign once I got in the company to be able to go through this executive development program, which is an amazing program to graduate from and have on your resume when you talk big box corporate retail. But in any event, I think to answer your question about just that transition, I went through a lot of phases of, is it okay to be me? My name alone is a lot, right? So you walk into these rooms and they automatically can't say your name. Or even the sense of, coming in from an assistant to an associate and now being the head of a division, and they still look to your assistant as that's the person who's running the show. And it's like, oh no, actually it's me. And so that alone, I shrunk myself a lot. I didn't want to show up as me. I tried the whole natural hair thing, and that wasn't my thing. I struggled with just a lot of showing up unapologetically me. And it was that shift of once I got into that leadership role, I didn't have to pretend anymore because now I'm here. And so you're going to get all of WyQuasia. I'm not going to water myself down. I'm going to be unapologetically me. And then I'm going to remove myself from places that don't serve me anymore. Because once I got there, I absolutely realized that, hey, you do need me to check a few boxes, but I'm also really good at what I do. And that I'm not here because you only need to check a few boxes, but I'm actually here because I know what I'm doing and what I'm talking about.
We'll stick to it. Talking about the role, what does it take to successfully lead a merchandising or apparel division today? Talk about KPIs, the key performance indicators that people need to be aware of to be in that type of role. So a lot of people don't know if they haven't been exposed that these are things, so talk about key performance indicators, certain other things they may need to know to be in that type of role, if that's something they think they aspire to be with.
Yeah, so I think what set me apart, I think, from my colleagues is that I come from an entrepreneurial family. So every single person in my family, mom, dad, my older sister, my younger brother, never worked for anyone a day in their life. They've always been a part of family businesses. So I'm the only one that after college decided that I was going to venture out and, work in the corporate space. So I think that alone for me was something different that I had that my colleagues didn't. Because to your point, when you work for yourself, there's no sick days. There's no taking time off, work vacations around what you have to do, and you also work on vacation. So having that mindset, being around my family, that made me different in the corporate side, because I worked like a dog, and that's how essentially I was able to get myself up as fast as I did on the career ladder. And so I think from a standpoint of getting in that corporate mindset, it's the entrepreneurial side. I think that's important. B, if you're in merchandising and you want to be a buyer, I always say you should be able to buy anything. I went from buying fashion to now I buy cannabis, which that's a whole different story to talk about and how we got there. But you should literally be able to buy anything. You have to take yourself out of what you are buying and focus on the customer. It is about so being customer centric is the number one KPI that I always use as a performance objective. Secondly, if it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense. So you can have the most beautiful idea, but what type of revenue is it going to generate? And what is the investment of it going to be? I think those two things are always at the center of strategy that I plan. And then I am big on white space. So, I think I love when people say there's room for everyone. And I think you're the first person I ever heard say it's not room for everyone. Like, you're all not going to be there. And I think that's very true. Especially now in this day and age where we're at with technology and AI and all of these things. Like, why is your idea so different? And what is that white space opportunity that is actually going to serve? I think those three things is what builds you a strong strategy when you're building an assortment for a company and growing into an executive role where now I'm the head of an apparel division. I'm sitting at the table with the CEO, the CFO, and now I have to have my ideas for this entire merchandising operation. How does that then put me in a position to continue the conversation and continue to show up as me? And I think that's one of the biggest things that caused me to say, I'm stepping down, stepping out of corporate retail, and I'm going to be my own boss. Because even at the most highest level of leadership, I've still had to face the fact that there are certain morals and values that you may be asked to compromise. And that wasn't something that I was willing to do. And that sometimes they like the idea of you, but they don't really want to accept the reality of you. And so putting you in these positions, check some boxes. Also, when it comes with WyQuasia, it comes with the full me. So I'm not just going to come show up at this table and check the boxes for you, but I'm coming with my voice, coming with my opinion, and you may not like it. And so I had to remove myself from tables that ultimately didn't serve me because I could not be unapologetically one.
But you didn't go in being unapologetic. You worked it up.
Worked it up. You can't hit them all at once. You'll never get there hitting with them all at once.
So, and now you say stepping down, but I say truly stepping up. Because now you're out of program. You have your boutique consultancy. So talk about class. We have a little bit of a class in history today. Talk about class of what brands are you passionate about servicing, and what are the services that you're offering?
So I'm so passionate about small businesses. So as large as my family businesses are, they're small businesses in Westchester. We have a daycare facility. We have an amusement center. It's very similar to like Dave & Buster's. We have the largest cannabis dispensary in Westchester County. And we also have the Party Patrol, which includes a mobile video game theater. So all of those businesses encompass all started by my family. And so I'm passionate about helping small businesses. A lot of times people don't want to give you the resources, people gatekeep. That was one of the biggest things and the hardest things for me in the fashion industry is the gatekeeping. And it was the gatekeeping from the people that looked like me.
Right.
So that's what drove me insane. So I found my resources and my mentors and my sponsors. If you don't know the difference between the two, please get you a mentor and sponsor. A mentor is someone that you can bounce ideas off of, you can talk to, but a sponsor is someone that is going to advocate for you in rooms when you are not there. They are going to say, that job is open, and hey, I think Quasia would be the best person for that job for this reason. But in any event, I had to create some of those opportunities myself. And a lot of times the people that helped me climb the ladders, they did not look like me. Most of the time, they did not look like me. So Plasma Capri was formed to essentially stop gatekeeping, to help make those introductions to why should you have to start over from the beginning when there's someone that's already did it that knows those connections and at an affordable price. I think was the biggest thing for me was being able to have access to lenders, being able to have access to someone that understands human resources and how to build a small company, being able to have access to someone to address you when you're saying that you want to show up at these business seminars, you don't know, what's the right way to show up. Really pooling all of my resources together and creating this consultancy for small businesses, people that are just starting out, trying to really build their brand.
And I'm purposely because you talked about how to show up. Let's talk about the development of action. And let's talk about fashion anyway. What are some of the ways that people should tips for them to go about approaching brands and opportunities or if they want to build relationships?
Yes, so I call it your 30-second commercial. Write it down, practice it in the mirror. When you get that opportunity, go. And I love sitting and watching a lot of you approach the two women before me that spoke. And I heard good dialogue and then I heard some like, dang, she should have practiced that 30 seconds a little bit better. But your 30-second commercial, it's the elevator pitch. I think that that's something that everyone should have when they're trying to break down barriers and get their foot into the door. I think another important thing is just putting yourself out there. Opportunities always present themselves, but the hungry ones are the people that are really going to get it. So don't be afraid to put yourself out there. I'm a personal fan of LinkedIn in this corporate space, and it's only because of the way that you're able to network. So if you are a fashion brand, I've found a lot of people that I work with as a buyer through LinkedIn. They were not afraid at all to slide in my DM and say, hey, I am this up and coming brand and I wanted to know XYZ. And it can get overwhelming. You may not get a response, but then you also may get a response. And for me, being in the role that I was in, it was so important again, because I chose to look for diversity and I sought out those opportunities. So don't be afraid to put yourself out there. I think it's the biggest thing when we talk about the transition or trying to build your brand. But yeah, I think those are the things that are relevant.
Just want to remind anyone, you can go ahead, go ahead and submit questions if you want. Via Slido, you do not have to download an app. Within your packet, you can scan the code to submit your question, or you can just put in the event code and I will present the question. Not so much personal personnel, but the brands. What are some of the things, the mistakes that you see brands make when they're starting out?
I think not knowing your brand. Again, I'm gonna go back to you because you said it. Your brand, if you're gonna want to style for someone, make sure that whoever you are pitching to is gonna represent your brand. So I think one of the biggest things that I see is that people don't actually know who their brand is, or who their brand, who they want it to be. And then what happens is you're easily influenced by someone like myself, trying to make your brand now fit my narrative or what I want, and you're letting me take you off the path of what your brand actually is. So I think you just have to be true to your brand. Know who your brand is. And I would say don't sacrifice it for someone else's narrative.
Let's dive into like, how should they approach that? How should they, what are tips for negotiation to keep that from happening? How will they kill that fear, that apprehension that they may have with this idea that they have? And on the other part of that, coming along, especially, right? How should they protect their brain? And they're just starting out to, really can't go into too much detail with that, but thinking if they have something that's a cultural significance, what are things they need to think about? I guess just quick 1, 2, 3 tips on registering.
Yeah, so definitely, you're going to want to network and you're going to want these opportunities to be able to get your brand all of this light and attention. I think you'll know immediately if it's going to service you, or if it's going to be for another agenda. So I would say just have discretion, and only approach the brands or the companies that they have they have the same interests as you. Everything is public now with things on the media. So if a company is not openly, and I'll just use DEI as an example, if a company's not openly standing behind DEI, your brand is you're bold and being up unapologetically, this is Black, this is bold, this is beautiful. Why would you approach a company, right? That's not saying that they're standing behind DEI. So do your research. Don't take every opportunity that's knocking itself at your door, because I will tell you they will try to whitewash your brand. If that's, and whether it's a personal brand or it's a physical brand, they will try to whitewash it to fit a narrative. I think the other thing that's for a sponsor that are very much in line or into with who you are, but also who you plan to become and who you want your brand to be. The girl that I was at 21 graduating college is not the woman that I stand here 15 years later. I've grown, I've evolved. Some of the things that were non-negotiables for me then are negotiables for me now, and vice versa. I think it's just important for you to know that you're going to evolve, your brand's going to evolve, but you have to have limitations in it. Like, what are your absolute non-negotiables? Like, what are things that you're open to consider? I had the pleasure of consulting a brand from Brazil that wanted to open its first flagship here in New York City. Their entire brand is built upon Jesus. They're a very Christian family, and they kept their tags. The tags on their clothing were like Bible verses and all of these different things. And we took them here. They came here. We met with a few different retailers, and all of the retailers wanted to strip that from them. And they were considering stripping it. And I'm like, you built your entire brand on your faith. And if it's that serious for you to get into, a Nordstrom, a Macy's, a Target, whatever it is it worth compromising your brand? And that was something that they really had to take back and consider. And I stand here to say that they're back at the drawing board, because for me, them being willing to just strip that from their brand and their entire brand was built on that. I don't want to work with you because you don't know who your brand is. And you're willing to let someone like completely just dissect your initial investment in your brand.
Thank you for being transparent with that. This see what you would think of it. I mean, I've heard you don't want to work with them because I can't put it exactly how you said it. Basically, they're not firm on their belief. So, so thank you for saying that. I do have one question. If anybody else had to submit a question, go ahead and submit it via the app. Final words of encouragement do you have for aspiring or budding fashion or individuals who believe that they want to progress in the corporate space to evolve to change? What were some of your that you can share? You don't mind sharing your development tips, habits, books you read, anything like that?
Yeah, so I mean, corporate America is not for the weak. I'll say that to anyone. I do think, from the standpoint of structure, it definitely creates structure and it does help you carry over. I carry over that structure into the entrepreneurial side of my life now. But I would say be unapologetically you. And I say this all the time and I mean it. I mean, don't obviously come to work and, you got into a crazy fight or whatever. Like keep it respectful, keep it, definitely in modesty, but I would say be unapologetically you. It's very hard for you to turn up when you get there versus if you build that momentum all the way up. And I think that that's something that I had to quickly learn that, this whole time I'm trying to fit into the narrative. I'm trying to not be too much because my name's already enough. And now I'm exhausted because I'm getting home and I have to peel off these layers of who I'm pretending to be all day to fit into the space when really who I actually am is way more interesting than who I'm trying to be. And it wasn't until the right sponsor is telling me this, like, you are dynamic. Your name is dynamic. Own it, step into it. And it wasn't until, like I said, I got to that executive leadership point in my career that was poured into me. So I always tell everyone that is looking for a mentor in me or someone else, be unapologetically you. I think that's the most important thing. Once you do that, everything else just really falls into place.
So this question came forth. Any tips on how to find a good mentor and or sponsor?
Yeah, everyone always asks, how do you find them? They're around you every single day. And you have to just ask. So, no one's going to be like, okay, I want to mentor you. You have to actually ask. And every time that I've asked someone to be my mentor, I've never gotten to know. I've heard stories where people were like, oh, I don't really have time for that. I don't know what that entails. But I think it's in all types of relationships. In any room that you're in, especially events like this, you should always leave networking with at least one person. There should be a new contact that you made here today in anyone. Because these are the relationships that keep you going and that keep you literally at the foundation of your career. The other way that I think that you can find mentors is to attend outside events that make you try something new. So, there's Eventbrite, there's a lot of ways that you can find other events online. But I definitely think that that's a way that you can expand your horizons and try to find mentors.
You think fashion etiquette? What's a good way for people to approach someone? And what's a way to make someone approach shy with?
Yeah, I think volunteering is a good thing to do. Show up in spaces where you're not necessarily, everything's not going to make you money, especially when you're starting out. So you have to be willing to do some freebies, just to make those relationships and those connections, especially I'll say in the fashion industry. Even if it's something outside of the realm of what you actually want to do or the scope of what you want to do. So try to find those networking opportunities, those volunteer opportunities, even something like this. I'm pretty sure that you needed some volunteers to assist you today. But they get you into rooms to then build relationships. There's dynamic people in this room. And by helping that day, you got access to that for free.
Absolutely, because there's one person I would call the person's name, but I know this person wants to do stuff. And so this person volunteered to be a part of this event. Yes, okay. And the person showed up in that manner consistently. So the person knows who that person is. And I'm very thankful, not just for that person, but for all the volunteers. I like to call them fashion advocates. I like to thank them for all the volunteers. So I've been really impressed. Like, this is one story. I can talk. So any other questions? You want to put this, this young lady is here, this dynamic woman is here, this powerhouse, this executive, but ask some questions. I will tell you at the conclusion of this event, for the Black fashionpreneurs that are on, that I'm interviewing today, I will have a table set up in the lobby area after the event for 20 to 30 minutes if they can stay. so that you can go to the table and greet them. So you give them a minute, after the next conversation, you're in the room, in that conversation, bears, you'll actually beat them out, and then you can go out there and see. Okay. Final question for you. Knowing what you know today, powerhouse that you are, looking back at the equation when you were starting out, what would you tell yourself?
That same thing, be unapologetic with you and show up, literally show up every single day as the woman that you are planning to be. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I wish I knew as my younger self, is do everything that I was doing in that moment for the woman who I wanted to be, not the woman that I was. And there was a lot of regrets made along the way. But the girls specifically that I mentor, the young high school girls, I always tell them, date for the woman that you want to be. Find the opportunities for the woman that you want to be. It's all great, spend your last dollar on looking good now, doing all those things, but invest and save for the woman that you want to be. So all of those things, I think it's just having that clear vision of it's not where you're at today, but it's where you want to go. And that's how you should really motivate and direct your life.
Thank you so very much.